My mother handed me a check for $39,000 and told me I was never really her daughter. 30 years. 30 years of birthday candles and Christmas mornings and bedtime stories, all of it was a lie. And she told me this while sipping white wine in our Lake Geneva mansion, like she was discussing the weather. Let me back up. It was supposed to be a family meeting about my father's estate. Nothing unusual. We'd done this before, gathering around the big mahogany table, talking about quarterly reports or charity trusts. Standard Winthrop family business. I can still see every detail of that afternoon. The scent of my mother's Chanel perfume. The quiet ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. The way sunlight caught her diamond bracelet as she poured herself another glass of wine, perfectly composed, not a hair out of place. Across from her sat my father, Dalton, silently stirring his drink. Graham checked his smartwatch every few minutes, already half thinking about quarterly profits. Violet smoothed her designer dress, camera ready as always for her next charity gala. Garrett slouched in his chair, pretending to be bored, though I caught the flash of something greedy in his eyes. Let's begin, my mother said crisply. I thought maybe we were dividing up assets for tax purposes or something. But then she opened a leather briefcase and started sliding folders across the table. Graham, the company is yours. He grinned. Of course it was. Violet, the Lake Geneva property. Garrett, your father's car collection. Then her gaze turned to me. For just a moment, her hand hovered over the last folder, as if she might change her mind. Then she pushed it toward me. It was thinner than the rest. Way thinner. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a check for $39,000 and a note typed in stiff Arial font, for your years with our family. The air went out of the room. I waited for someone to laugh. No one did. Is this some kind of mistake? My voice cracked. Where's the rest? Victoria folded her hands on the table. There is no mistake, Josephine. There's something we've kept from you, for your own good. She said it like a doctor delivering a terminal diagnosis. You were adopted. The word didn't make sense at first. It just hung there in the air, cold and impossible. Adopted? I repeated. What are you talking about? My father finally looked up from his drink. You were 3 months old. Your biological mother was a teenager who couldn't keep you. We gave you every opportunity, every comfort. Accept the truth, I snapped. Graham shifted uncomfortably. Mom, maybe this isn't the best way. Enough. Victoria cut him off sharply. The Winthrop Trust is bloodline only. It's out of our hands. Something inside me cracked. 30 years? I whispered. 30 years, and you're telling me this now? Over a check? She didn't flinch. We thought it would be kinder. Kinder. The word echoed in my head until it lost all meaning. I stood so fast my chair scraped against the marble floor. Keep your money. You've already taken everything that mattered. And before anyone could stop me, I walked out of that mansion, my so-called home, knowing I would never set foot in it again. I don't remember the drive back to my apartment. Just the rain, the blur of headlights, and the pounding in my chest that wouldn't stop. By the time I got home, my hands were trembling so hard I could barely turn the key. I dropped the envelope on the kitchen counter like it was poison. The check fluttered out, landing face up under the light. $39,000. The price tag for my entire life. My phone buzzed. It was Owen, my boyfriend. Hey, how'd the meeting go? I laughed, but it came out wrong. Turns out my family isn't really my family. What do you mean? They told me I was adopted today. Same day they handed out the inheritance. Silence. Then, softly, Jesus, Josephine. I sank to the floor, my back against the cabinets. Do you know what my mom said? You were never really one of us. Like I was some stranger who'd overstayed my welcome. Come here, Owen said. You shouldn't be alone. But I couldn't move. I just stared at the photo wall above my couch. Me in my graduation cap, Mom's arm around me, Dad clapping proudly in the background. Me blowing out candles at my 10th birthday party. The whole family on a ski trip in Aspen when I was 16. Every single photo felt like evidence of a crime. They had smiled for the camera, lied for the world, and called it love. I grabbed my laptop and started searching. Adoption records, birth certificates, anything that might tell me who I really was. But everything was sealed, locked away behind privacy laws and decades-old paperwork. That's when I realized they'd made sure I could never find the truth on my own. By morning, the sadness had hardened into something else. Anger. I made coffee and opened my laptop again. This time, I knew what I was looking for. Typed Private Investigator Adoption Records Milwaukee into the search bar. The first name that came up was Finn Calloway. Retired detective. Reputation, relentless, discreet, expensive. Perfect. When he picked up, his voice was gravelly. Calloway Investigations. I need to find my birth parents, I said. The adoption was private. Early 90s. The Win-throps handled it. Winthrop? He repeated. As in the Winthrops? Yes. He whistled softly. You're diving into deep water, sweetheart. Sometimes the truth's uglier than the lie. I'll take my chances. He paused. $200 a day, plus expenses. Done. As I hung up, I looked at the check still lying on the counter. For the first time, I didn't see shame. I saw fuel. They wanted to pay me off to disappear. But I was about to make sure the truth did the opposite. Finn Calloway's office was exactly what I expected. Old blinds, older coffee, and the faint smell of cigar smoke soaked into the walls. He didn't stand when I walked in. Just looked me up and down with eyes that had seen too much. So, you're the Winthrop girl? Not anymore, I muttered, sitting across from his desk. He opened a folder filled with scribbled notes and yellowed printouts. You were adopted in late '93. Private arrangement, no agency records. All handled by a Philadelphia lawyer named Edmund Hargrove. Ring a bell? No. My parents, I stopped myself. The Winthrops never mentioned a lawyer. Didn't think so. He leaned back. The file mentions a payment. $40,000 came from a holding company called Whitfield Enterprises. Offshore route, clean as snow. Someone paid a fortune to make sure this adoption stayed buried. My stomach clenched. You're saying my biological parents were rich? Maybe. Or maybe someone powerful wanted you gone. I stared at the name on the paper. Whitfield. I'd heard it before. Whitfield Enterprises was one of the biggest private investment firms in the country. Finn continued. Your birth certificate lists your mother as Grace Whitmore, age 19. No father listed. Address, a boarding house in Philadelphia. She disappeared 3 months after you were born. I swallowed hard. Is she alive? He shook his head. Haven't found a trace yet. But I'll keep digging. You ready for that? What do you mean? Some people don't like their past being dug up, sweetheart. Especially the kind with bank accounts in the Caymans. I folded my arms. You said you were relentless. Prove it. That earned me the faintest grin. You've got fire. I like that. Give me 2 weeks. I nodded, slid an envelope of cash across his desk, and stood. Josephine, he called as I reached the door. I turned. When I find what you're looking for, it might not make you happy. I'm not looking for happy, I said. I'm looking for real. 2 weeks passed in a fog. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped. I couldn't focus at work. Couldn't sleep. I kept replaying that meeting in my head, searching for signs I'd missed. Had Victoria ever really loved me? Or had every hug, every "I'm proud of you," been nothing more than obligation? I started noticing things I'd ignored before. The way she always introduced Graham as my son who runs the company but me as just Josephine. How family photos in the hallway traced back generations of Winthrops but never included any baby pictures of me. Owen tried to help. He'd come over with takeout, sit with me while I spiraled, remind me that I was more than just their rejection. But even he couldn't fill the hole that had opened up inside me. Then one Thursday evening, the call came. Finn's voice was different this time. Lower, strained. Josephine, you sitting down? I was standing in my kitchen, holding a mug I suddenly couldn't feel. Just tell me, Finn. He hesitated. I could hear him exhale. Your biological father is Christopher Whitfield. The mug slipped from my hands and shattered against the tile. Christopher Whitfield? I whispered. As in Whitfield Enterprises? The billionaire? The same one, he said quietly. Your mother, Grace Whitmore, was his intern. 19 years old. He was 27, married, and running his father's firm. I sank to the floor, broken ceramic cutting into my palm. I didn't even feel it. No, that's impossible. It's not. I found the payment records. He paid her to disappear, Josephine. $50,000 through a shell company. But here's what you need to hear. He knew where you ended up. He's known for 30 years. My hand pressed against my forehead. You mean he's been watching me? Indirectly. The Win-throps were one of his business clients. He kept tabs. Probably thought he was protecting you from a scandal. Protecting me? I laughed, but it came out as a sob. He erased me. Finn went quiet. Then, softer, there's something else. Your mother left a letter. Before she died. My breath caught. She's dead? Passed away 5 years ago. Breast cancer. But she left instructions with a law firm in New York. If you ever came looking, they were to give you the letter. Tears blurred my vision. What does it say? I haven't read it. But I spoke to the firm. It's addressed to you and to him. She wanted you both to know the truth. I wiped my face with shaking fingers. I need that letter. I'll arrange it, Finn said. But Josephine, this next part won't be easy. You're about to meet a man who spent decades pretending you don't exist. That night, I found myself searching his name online. There he was. Towering, polished, untouchable. Smiling beside presidents, standing on magazine covers, attending charity galas. The kind of man people bowed to. Article after article praised his business acumen, his philanthropy, his perfect family. Wife Caroline, married 32 years. Son Liam, following in his footsteps. Daughter Charlotte, studying international relations at Yale. A perfect family. One that didn't include me. But all I could see were his eyes. Green, piercing, achingly familiar. My eyes. The next morning, I called Finn back. Set the meeting, I said. You sure about this? No, I admitted. But I can't live another day wondering who I am. The Whitfield Tower rose over Chicago like a monument to arrogance. 50 stories of mirrored glass catching the sunlight. I stood in the marble lobby, clutching Grace Whitmore's letter like a weapon. My palms were sweating, my throat dry. I'd changed my outfit 3 times that morning, then realized it didn't matter. No outfit could prepare me for this. The receptionist looked up. Do you have an appointment? Tell Mr. Whitfield his past is here to see him. Her eyes widened, but she called upstairs. 10 minutes later, 2 security guards escorted me to a private elevator. The ride felt endless. I watched the floor numbers climb, each one pulling me closer to a truth I wasn't sure I wanted. When the doors opened, I stepped into a room that looked like a magazine spread. Dark walnut walls, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline. And behind a sleek desk sat Christopher Whitfield. He looked up slowly. In that instant, the world tilted. Those eyes. Green, sharp, familiar. Mine. Can I help you? His voice was deep, composed, rehearsed. I stepped forward, my heart hammering. I think you already know who I am. He frowned. I'm afraid I don't. Grace Whitmore's daughter. The pen slipped from his hand. He froze, color draining from his face. How did you find me? Turns out money doesn't bury everything. He stood, straightening his jacket. You shouldn't be here. Neither should you have been in her bed, I snapped. The words echoed off the glass walls. For the first time, the billionaire didn't look untouchable. He looked human. Cornered. Guilty. You don't understand, he said quietly. I was young. Stupid. I made a mistake. A mistake? I stepped closer, slamming the letter onto his desk. You bought her silence. You bought my life. And you let strangers raise me while you pretended I didn't exist. He flinched. I made sure you had a good home. You mean you paid for one? I hissed. The Winthrops weren't a family. They were a contract. His jaw clenched. You don't know what it was like back then. My marriage, my company, everything would have fallen apart. So you let her fall apart instead. He turned away, facing the skyline. For a long moment, all I could hear was the faint hum of the city below. She loved you, he said finally. Grace. She wanted to keep you, but she was terrified. She thought you'd hate her. I swallowed hard. And what about you? Were you terrified too? He didn't answer. I walked around the desk until I was standing beside him. I spent 30 years wondering why I didn't fit. Why my mother looked at me like I was someone else's shadow. And now I know, it's because I was. He turned to face me, eyes glassy. What do you want, Josephine? I want the truth, I said. Not your money, not your pity. Just the truth. He nodded slowly. The truth is, I thought paying her off would make the problem disappear. But you didn't disappear. You grew up into someone who looks exactly like the one thing I tried to forget. The words stung. But there was something beneath them. Regret. I took a shaky breath. I'm not here to ruin you. I'm here because I refuse to be a secret anymore. He rubbed a hand over his face. You won't be. You mean that? He nodded, voice cracking. You're my daughter. That's the truth. I can't undo the past, but I can stop hiding from it. We stood there in silence. Father and daughter. Strangers bound by 30 years of lies. When I left his office, the air outside felt sharper. Cleaner. For the first time, I wasn't just the girl who'd been disowned by one family. I was the woman who had forced another to face his sins. And somehow, that felt like power. 2 days later, my phone rang. His voice was softer than before. No longer the iron billionaire. Just a man who'd run out of excuses. Josephine, he said. I told them. I froze. Told who? My family. My wife. My children. They know now. For 30 years, I'd been invisible. Now I existed in a way that terrified me. He invited me to dinner at their home the following week. For 3 nights, I stared at that invitation on my counter. Owen said I didn't have to go, that I didn't owe Christopher anything. But part of me needed to see this through. Part of me needed to know if his other children would look at me the way the Winthrops had, like I was something that didn't belong. The Whitfield residence was everything you'd expect from old money. Marble floors, chandeliers, walls lined with art. But beneath all that polish, I felt something else. Tension. When I entered the dining room, Caroline Whitfield stood first. She wasn't what I expected. Graceful, elegant, yes. But her eyes were kind. The kind of kindness that sees before it judges. She extended her hand. You must be Josephine. I must be, I said, trying to smile. Then came Liam, their eldest. Early 30s, all business and suspicion. He offered a stiff nod. No words. Charlotte, his sister, was the opposite. Warm, curious, eyes glistening with tears. You have Dad's eyes, she said softly. The table was set like something out of a movie. Crystal, linen, quiet music. But no one ate much. Every fork scrape felt deafening. Christopher cleared his throat. This is overdue. I made mistakes, ones I'll never undo. But Josephine deserves to know her family. All of it. Caroline laid a hand on his. We're glad you're here. I nodded, even though I wasn't sure what I was feeling. Grateful, awkward, angry. All of it at once. When dessert came, Charlotte leaned closer. So what was it like growing up with the Win-throps? I stared at my plate. Like living in a museum. Beautiful things everywhere, but none of them were really yours. She reached out, touching my hand. You are now. Something in me cracked open at that. Liam finally spoke, his voice careful. I looked you up. The work you do, it's impressive. It was a small thing, but it meant something. He'd taken the time to know me beyond the scandal. After dinner, Caroline walked me to the door. He's been carrying this for decades, she said quietly. Don't punish him forever. You were the best thing he ever gave the world, even if he was too cowardly to admit it. I wanted to believe her. Driving home that night, the city lights blurred through my windshield. My life had split into two timelines. One filled with lies. One trembling with truth, and I realized something strange. For the first time in my life, I wasn't looking for belonging anymore. I was looking for peace. 6 months later, the headlines hit. Winthrop Industries declares bankruptcy after losing Whitfield contract. I stared at the news alert on my phone, coffee going cold in my hand. It wasn't satisfaction I felt. It was something darker, an ache between justice and grief. An hour later, Graham called. His voice was frantic. Josephine, it's bad. Mom's losing everything. She's blaming you. Says you turned Whitfield against us. I laughed, but it sounded hollow. You mean the same Whitfield whose money she took for 30 years? The man who paid for the lie she lived in? He didn't answer. I heard him exhale shakily. She wants to talk to you. I have nothing left to say to her. But that night, I got the call anyway. The number I'd deleted twice lit up my phone. Against my better judgment, I answered. Josephine. Just hearing her voice sent a chill through me. Mother, I said flatly. There was a pause. Then a sob she tried to hide. You destroyed us. No, I said softly. You destroyed me. You just didn't notice until it started costing you money. How dare you? How dare I? I cut in. You looked me in the eye for 30 years and lied. You let me believe I was one of you. You let me love you. And now that the lie has fallen apart, you want to blame me for the truth. Her silence was worse than shouting. Finally, she said, you think this makes you better than us? You're still a mistake, Josephine. You always were. I took a breath that felt like swallowing glass. Then maybe it's time that mistake learned to live without you. And I hung up. For the first time in months, I cried. Not out of anger. Out of release. A few days later, I drove back to the Lake Geneva estate one last time. The mansion looked hollow. Windows dark, gardens overgrown. A for sale sign leaned against the front gate. Through the iron bars, I could see the fountain in the courtyard, dry and cracked, the marble chipped. The same place we used to take family photos every summer. I thought of the girl I used to be. Standing there in her white dress, smiling for a family that never truly saw her. Now she was gone. Thought I'd find you here. It was Finn Calloway, hands shoved in his coat pockets, looking older, softer somehow. Heard the Winthrops finally went under, he said. You okay? I don't know, I admitted. It doesn't feel like victory. It just feels empty. He nodded. Truth does that. It burns everything down before you can rebuild. We stood there in silence, watching the sunset glint off the dead fountain. You know, he said, your mom, Grace, she'd be proud of you. She didn't want revenge. She wanted freedom. Looks like you've finally found it. Maybe he was right. When I got back to the city, Christopher called. I saw the news. You didn't do this, Josephine. They did it to themselves. But I'm sorry anyway. For what? I asked. For not being there when you needed someone. For letting you grow up thinking love was something you had to earn. I swallowed hard. It's strange. The family that lied to me lost everything. And the father who abandoned me is the one trying to make it right. That's how life works, he said quietly. Sometimes the truth gives back what the lie stole. When the call ended, I looked out over the city skyline. For the first time, I didn't feel small under it. The Win-throps had fallen. The lie was dead. And somehow, that gave me room to breathe. A year has passed since the day everything fell apart. And strangely, it feels like that's when my real life began. I kept the $39,000 check. Not in a bank, not in a drawer, but framed above my desk at the Whitmore Foundation, the nonprofit I founded for young women facing unplanned pregnancies. The brass plate beneath it reads, "The price of truth is worth more than the cost of lies." Every morning I look at it and remember what that money was supposed to mean. Payment to disappear. To stay silent. To accept a version of love that came with conditions. Instead, I turned it into my beginning. Christopher kept his word. He didn't try to buy me a life this time. He simply became part of mine. He visits the foundation every month, quiet and humble, carrying coffee and files like any other volunteer. When people recognize him, he just smiles and says, "I'm here for my daughter." Caroline joins sometimes too. She's become something I never expected, a mother figure who actually wants to know me. She asks about my day, remembers small details, shows up when it matters. Charlotte calls me every week. We talk about everything, work, relationships, the weird adjustment of suddenly having a sister. She's teaching me that family can be something you build, not just something you're born into. Even Liam, the one who could barely look at me that first dinner, sent a donation last month with a handwritten note, "Welcome to the family, Josephine." Owen and I got married last spring. We kept it small. No photographers, no spectacle. Christopher walked me down the aisle, hands trembling, tears he didn't try to hide. Caroline hugged me afterward and whispered, "You have your mother's grace." She didn't mean Victoria Winthrop. She meant Grace Whitmore. And that's who I carry with me now. The young woman who was silenced, who refused to let her daughter grow up without truth. I found Grace's letter a few months ago. Finn had delivered it in a sealed envelope, and I'd kept it in my desk drawer for weeks before I had the courage to open it. Her handwriting was shaky but clear. "My darling daughter, if you're reading this, it means you found the truth. I'm sorry I couldn't be there to tell you myself. I was young and scared, and I made choices I regret. But I never regretted you. Not for a single second. You were the best part of me, even if I couldn't keep you. I hope you find peace. I hope you find love. I hope you forgive me. And I hope you know that letting you go was the hardest thing I ever did. You deserved better than what I could give you. You deserved everything. Love, Mom." I cried for hours after reading it. Not because I was angry. Because I finally understood. Grace didn't abandon me. She loved me enough to let me go. Sometimes I drive past the old Winthrop mansion. The new owners painted it white, planted roses along the walkway. It's beautiful again. But it isn't mine. It never was. My home is smaller, warmer, filled with people who know my story and love me anyway. I used to think the truth destroyed me. But it didn't. It rebuilt me. Piece by piece, scar by scar, into someone stronger, freer, realer than I ever was before. Because in the end, family isn't who gives you their name. It's who gives you their heart. Thanks for listening, and if you liked this story, share it with others, and don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about finding truth, rebuilding identity, and discovering where you truly belong. Sometimes the family you find is worth more than the family you lost.